Hey everyone, I'm Rather Incoherent, and today I would like to talk about the mods that I'm using in my Subnautica playthrough for 2022. In my playthrough up on the channel, I had a few more mods running than this. Some of them were unnecessary, some of them were causing performance issues, and ultimately, once I finished my playthrough, I stripped it down to this. These are the only mods I actually use without any issues, and I'll talk about the caveats of that statement as I go through them. But what I won't be talking about is how to actually use a Vortex mod manager. There are plenty of tutorials that I could not possibly say better myself already on YouTube for how to install Vortex Mod Manager and download and install mods through the Nexus. I'm going to go through the mods, starting with the most simple mods and moving up to the most complicated and, in my opinion, best mods. So to that end, we have 5 mods that are absolutely critical in that you literally need them, but you don't care about them as a player at all. Those mods are QMod Manager 4, Version Checker, Utilities for QMod Manager, SML Helper Modding Helper, and ECC Library. All of these are various prerequisite files for other mods that help the modders do their work. You as a player will never really be interacting with any of them, except for QMod Manager, which will give you a mods button to change settings for all of the other mods in your in-game menu. You really don't interact with these at all, you just need them to run other mods. Next, we have some really simple mods, such as running with tools. It lets you run with tools. I don't feel like I need to show a clip of this one. Next, we have Seaglide map controls. Instead of pressing one button to cycle through 5 possible combinations of lights and maps, now right-click turns light on and off, and F toggles map on and off, and there's separate features, and it's way more intuitive. Better scanner blips changes it so that scanner blips are smaller and more translucent when they're further away, and bigger and more opaque when they're close up to you, and has various configuration settings. Blueprint Tracker, if you played Below Zero, is exactly that feature. It's very handy. I don't use it often, but it is very nice to have if you do want to use it. Again, if you played Below Zero, you know exactly what the habitat control panel is. I personally don't use it often and barely use it all in my game, but it feels like it's an important part of the game that should be there. Now, as we come over to custom beacons, we start getting into more complicated mods where I do feel the need to open my game and show you how they work. Getting into my save file, you can see that for the Aurora, I've marked its stern with a Reaper. I've marked the mountain with a mountain. Pressing N to come over to the Beacons tab, you can see that there's a lot of customizability now. There are way more icons than there used to be, and I don't use anywhere near all of them. And possibly more importantly, there's way more colors to select from as well. This just makes it easier to look around and know what you're doing. If everything looks like that, then you have to hover over them individually. Whereas right now, I know that's the Aurora, that's the mountain, I don't need to hover them. It's just incredibly handy. Now, with custom beacons, there is a caveat. There is a bug with the mod where when you first install it, it will not save your beacons. Every time you quit out, they'll reset back to default numbers, or default icons and colors, rather. In the comments, there is a user called The Lich who has posted a fixed DLL file here. You're going to need to open up the mod, replace that DLL file, and then manually upload it to Vortex Mod Manager to get it to work. For our next mod, we have the Grappling Arm upgrade. It shoots further, faster, pulls you in quicker, and has a shorter cooldown. What's that look like? Coming into the game, these improved grappling hooks are fantastic. They have a shorter cooldown, they fire further, pull you in faster. There's just like nothing to complain about with them. They're absolutely incredible. And sure, you could argue balance concerns, I guess. But, you're in a prawn suit, right? Like, at this point, the game is imbalanced. It may as well be incredibly fun as well. And dear lord, I didn't realize how important it was that the base be good for just AFKing and grappling around, but yeah, this is actually the best part of my base, is that I can just grapple around when I'm bored. Or to demonstrate things, I guess. Next up, we have Snap Builder that puts a building grid into the game. I'll show you how that works. So, everyone's been through this. You want to build your lockers and you want all of them to be lined up nicely? Well, that's usually a hassle. You can do this now. It'll just automatically snap them into those places. Is that too far apart? You want to try to cram more in? In the top left there, you can see middle click turns off snapping entirely, but I won't snapping. And for fine snapping, you hold left control. So now, by holding left control, I can try to cram in as many as I want to into a smaller grid, like that. It just makes it so much easier, and the controls are easy enough that there's never really a reason not to use it. Next up is a mod called More Quick Slots Plus. It gives you more quick slots and lets you customize how many you have and what their hotkeys are. I'll show you in game. As you can see in my game, I set it to 8. 8's just the number of tools you get. It's the reasonable number of hotkeys to have, and I had them numbered 1 through 8. Theoretically, you could optimize them and change them to be like Q and E and other things closer to WASD, but it's Subnautica. I never felt the need to. Coming down to quick slots, you can see there's a slider going down all the way from 5 up to 20. I find that to be completely gratuitous and think 8's just the right number to have. But yeah, it's a simple mod. It does what it says on the tin. It's highly customizable, and I see no reason to play without it because, quite simply, you use more than 5 tools. In the base game, every time I showed up to a laser cutter wreck, I would have to go to my inventory and equip the laser cutter. And now I don't anymore. It's just convenient. Now, next up, we have a mod, our first of 2 that isn't actually on the Nexus. This is Building Tweaks by Mr. Purple. What does it do? So, the way that Building Tweaks works by default is the hotkey is G. I want to build a foundation here. I don't have a good reason for this, I just want to. And the game won't let me, so I can press G, and now I can. Use this sparingly, because if you do it in the wrong place and you actually do put it next to like a multi-purpose room, your multi-purpose room might connect to it and start doing weird things like letting you swim in your base. Or even the weirder thing is letting you dive out of your base and the game freaks out and teleports you back to a random point in your base. So when you're using something like this, which is very much capable of backfiring, save your game first. But there are very cool things you can do with it. Sometimes the game will just be mean and not let you place things that very obviously should be able to be placed. For instance, back here, the foundation behind the first one, which is just as sensible as the first one, couldn't be built without turning on the free building tool. On the other hand, if you've gone completely mad with power, you could just build a locker on your prawn suit for more storage. There's lots of fun things you can do with this, lots of little helpful things you can do with it. It's not very important and it can backfire, as my base is demonstrating. But I find it very helpful for letting you do things that obviously should be allowed. Next, we start getting into the really important stuff. Performance Booster is a mod that gives you these options. This is actually an out-of-date picture. There are more options than this now. And it helps you to draw things in from further away. Speaking of, there is a fairly well-known thread on Steam about increasing your draw distance. There's this initial one just talking about the fact these settings exist. And there's a sticky post from 2021. You don't want to use the one from 2021 because this exact thing here limits you down from 16 threads to 4 because it's out of date from a point in time when it didn't actually have innate support for 8 threads or more in the game. You don't want to copy this. You want to come to the most recent INI anyone's posted, which is by Akbar sometime during February of this year, this file here, where it says max thread 16. His file also just seems to like have literally no issues whatsoever for me, except for the one issue. Let me go show you how it feels to play. So first, let me just hop over to the grassy plateaus. Because while there are basically no issues with draw distance, grass is the one exception to that. Because as far as I can tell, virtually no matter what your settings are, doesn't matter your hardware or what you tell the INI files to do, grass just kinda sucks, and the grassy plateaus make that real obvious. And I can't find any settings to fix that anywhere, no matter what I do. However, let's go show you moving incredibly quickly, and the world actually loading in around me in time with me. I guess this actually counts. I'm moving quite fast right now. Wasn't really thinking that it's moving quickly. But I can do much, much faster than this by going down into Grand Reef. This is a little bit sketchy, but we have improved grappling hooks. We'll make it. At this point, we're moving pretty fast. It would be reasonable to expect to hit the ground and encounter some sort of problem with clipping through things. But the ground's just loading it in front of me in time. It's not an issue. And that's so incredibly nice. Like, with base game settings, you will go through the ground before it loads so frequently when you're moving this quickly. And with Performance Booster and those INI tweaks, you just don't. You have the tiniest bits of pop-in, like right there for a split second, this base hadn't been loaded in. And the grass is still an issue because welcome to Subnautica. But by and large, things are just so much better with these two mods. With the new clip maps from that Steam thread and the Performance Booster mod, it's just so much better. Next up, we have the appropriately named Map mod. It does what it says on the tin. Let me show you how intricate it gets, though. Now, coming over to my game, you can see I have Fog of War off because I've finished the game. I have no need to keep Fog of War on anymore. And this is the full map and topographic detail. Much more useful is the biome version, which shows you the boundaries of every biome specifically. But during the normal gameplay and the default for this mod, I would recommend keeping Fog of War on. And as you can see now with Fog of War toggled back on, yeah, I've explored most of the world, but there are places that I haven't been. Mostly the crash zone and the dunes, because why would you? But the map has a lot of features beyond that. You can see there are wrecks on the map. Some of them are grayed out because I've clicked them to turn them off because I've already gone through that wreck. I don't need to do it a second time. You can see all of your beacons on the map and you can toggle them on and off from here. And there are deeper maps for the deeper biomes, like the Lost River, the Jelly Shrooms, inactive and active lava zones. It's just absolutely wonderful. I'm not entirely sure if I'd recommend maps for a new player. I don't think I would. I think learning to navigate with beacons and using the Aurora and the islands as landmarks is really, really interesting and fun. But on subsequent playthroughs of the game, and especially for YouTube when other people are trying to watch what I'm doing, I feel that maps are really, really helpful. At this point, we're getting into what I view as the 4 most important mods of the setup, with no competition. EasyCraft does what it says on the name. Let me show you. Looking at my inventory, you can see I'm not carrying any building materials with me. But coming over to my fabricator, there are lots of things listed with green ingredients because those are in my base. They're in this base, so it doesn't make me have them in my inventory. More importantly though, it skips even more steps than that. I don't have any ion batteries, but I could make them. So if I were to click this ion power cell, it would deduct more power because it would be making the ion batteries and then the ion power cell. And there's also a range to this where it works outside of your base. That's incredibly important because even though I have no titanium only, I can build anything to my base from the stuff inside my base, such as the titanium in my base being used to make this multi-purpose room instead of needing to get it in my inventory first. This cuts out almost all of the tedious inventory management in the game and the meticulous locker organization that is a necessary part of Subnautica without this mod. And for that, I greatly appreciate it and will never be playing without it ever again. Next up, I want to talk about a mod you've been seeing in the background so far. FCS Studios is a DLC-sized crafting expansion to the game that adds an entirely new system of earning Altera credits and essentially getting Amazon Prime things shipped to your house. Yes, that has a slight immersion fracture where you should just hitch a ride back on the Prime truck, but that's not important. We're here to talk about the tremendous improvements to the base building that this offers. Now, before I continue, right now you have to go to their website to get it, and the version on the Nexus has been hidden. The current version has a lot of different bugs. A lot of them. And in spite of that, I still think it's easily worth playing with. In the future, when the mod is more stable and it's on the Nexus, I would be able to recommend it with absolutely no qualifiers, but you need to know there's going to be a lot of bugs. Now, what is the mod actually? If you were to go try to download it, no matter which of these buttons you click right now, it's going to take you to a mega upload folder, and there are several subfolders within it. My understanding is the mod suite should be usable directly as a download it, get all the other files sort of deal. In my experience, it literally doesn't work with Vortex Mod Manager, but these other 6 individually do. And since it's supposed to be the same thing, you just get all 6 individually. These other 6 being the hub, which is how all the other mods are bought. These things are various different sets of objects you can buy. Those being energy, home, life support, production, and storage solutions. Let me take you to my base and go through each of these individually. First off, over in the crags, all the way at the edge of the map, the Altera Hub fabrication facility has crashed. To start interacting with this mod in any way, you're going to need to do a small quest in that area. It's going to require 6 power cells, so you can't really do it right at the start of the game. But once you've done that and gotten a couple of items hidden around the base, and unlocked a couple of doors, you'll be able to start interacting with all of this stuff. The way it works is that there are a couple of items you can just build normally. You can build the Altera transport drone, which is going to bring you the things you order. And you can build the ore consumer, which is going to convert the ores in your game into credits to buy things with. Of course, you'll need somewhere to ship all of that. So down at the bottom here, you can build the Altera Hub Depot, which is where your deliveries will arrive. Everything else from these mods is built with kits, a base oxygen tank kit or a base utility kit. And these are the things that you're ordering through what is essentially Amazon Prime. Hitting F2 opens this PDA. Now, there's a teleportation tab. If you have teleporters built, you can teleport from one to the other using power at basis. However, you can also carry handheld teleporters with you that supply power from where you are and can take you to any powered teleporter somewhere else on the base. We'll get more into teleportation in a second. Down here in account, you can create your account. Apparently I've glitched out of my account, it's been destroyed at this point. Normally, these accounts would last for your entire game. You're not ever supposed to make a new one.
Thank you for creating it.
And what having an account does is it allows you to have an Altera debit card, and it starts tracking how much money you've made through the ore consumers. This is the little power bank I was talking to you about a second ago. We'll get into that more as we go through the actual solutions file that includes teleportation. Now, as you can see, I have a huge pile of these ore consumers. The way they work is if they have power to them, they'll be yellow. If they don't, they'll be red. And you'll need to turn them on by pressing F once they do have power. Click on them to open them. There's a speed you can set it to. What this does is it determines how much energy it consumes to let you use it without bankrupting your base's power, essentially. And then you can throw ores in it. It will consume those ores and generate credits. The more valuable ores give you more. So obviously, copper's going to give you little, diamonds are going to give you a lot. As I said earlier, this is just where your things arrive. You really never interact with this. It's just so that they'll actually show up in your Altera Hub Depot, which will be inside your base somewhere. In my case, I can't really show off buying things, as I said earlier, mine is snapped in half and Amazon no longer delivers to my planet. It's very sad. The last tab before we go into things that you can buy is the Field Creator Studios Wiki, which tells you almost everything about everything here. There are going to be some oversights, the mod is still a work in progress, but it gives you huge amounts of information and you can generally find out what you're doing wrong. So I have all of these huge drills, and they are for gathering ores to consume. Coming over to them, you'll see that there are a bunch of options. I've never actually touched the programming page. I've never tried to power them from power cells because they're powered by my base. And I've never touched their beacon settings, so I turn off the beacons immediately. You do, however, need to put lubricant in them so they'll actually work. Coming back to the front page, you can see that it's only at 21% lubricant. When it hits 0, it will stop running. Very importantly, there's a filter page. Again, mod has lots of issues right now. My experience is that when you use the blacklist, it doesn't work. However, coming over to filters, you can see this one is set to get just titanium so that I never need to farm titanium again. The other three, however, are all set to filter for diamonds and gold so that they'll generate enough money on their own. I never have to farm anything myself. However, to actually open these and get something from their inventory, you can do that, or instead, you can build a remote storage unit. This is remote storage. It is holding all 200 items that it can of gold and diamonds from these drills. If I had taken them out, they'd have kept putting them in there, but because it's filled up, they started putting them into their own internal storage. And the way you toggle that is by going to change Altura storage connections. There's a remote storage unit nearby, and I just toggle it to use it. That's all it is, nothing more, nothing less. So that's the basics of getting ore, where it goes, how to sell it, how to make sure your deliveries arrive to you, and how to get your deliveries. So what are you buying? Well, those ore consumers are actually an example of the sort of thing you can buy, but let's go through all of it relatively briefly. We're going to start with the Vehicles tab. Because I have no vehicles installed, we're done. Moving over to the Miscellaneous tab, you can see this is where you mostly buy things that are already resources in the game. Once you've unlocked a resource yourself, you gain the ability to buy it with credits. There are also telepower upgrades, but I view these as largely unnecessary, and this is just a specific biofuel, that's what that is if you're wondering. Coming over to production, which is fairly simple, you have these drilling rigs I was talking about a second ago. The light drilling rig cannot be teleported away, you have to manually open it every time. The heavy drilling rig is able to use those automated storage units, and it also drills more and faster and has bigger internal storage. In my opinion, even though it's more efficient in terms of money turned into ore to get light units, it's just way better to get the heavy units for the automation factor. There's some other things that I never got around to testing. The matter analyzer allows duplication of food, it seems like. The replicator is duplication of literally anything else. The hydroponic harvester is a tiny farm, it seems. And the autocrafter seems like it would allow me to tell my base to just automatically make X for me. Again, I haven't gotten around to testing these, but they seem cool. Coming over to energy solutions, I did get around to testing basically all this. The Altera Gen is really just a bioreactor. They have a universal charger that can hold 10 power cells or batteries and recharge them. The main thing this is really cool for is being able to carry a battery charger with you that only takes up one inventory slot for a base you're about to set up. They have a massive solar clusters. More importantly, they have power storage. So all of your solar bases can have much higher power during the night and then build back up during the day. There is essentially current power, the underwater equivalent of wind power. Telepower pylons to teleport power from one location to another is awesome. And on the surface, you can make these wind surfer platforms, which are actually shockingly well made, and I would like to show them to you. And coming around my base briefly, this is a telepower pylon to send power out from my base. That is an energy storage battery, and these two are the solar clusters. To make the wind platforms, you'll need to come out to your base, go down to Windsurfer, and create the Windsurfer operator. And then, much like the Neptune rocket behind me, they can construct a huge platform, only this one is very, very different on the top. So after a short while of building it, they'll drop it down. Oh Jesus, don't try to climb it while it's dropping! Like I said, the mod's a work in progress and has some issues currently. Alright, so now standing on top of it, you can immediately see that the Altera building here on the operator is actually like just really well made. It fits in perfectly. Popping inside, all the textures are like what you would expect them to be in the base game. The way that the operator screen works is there's a platform kit mode telling you that you are either making an empty platform or a windmill. Green platforms, or green squares rather, are connections you're allowed to build through, and red ones are existing connections. I only have one of each, but that's enough to demonstrate them. And as you can see, there are simply remove buttons, and then you can come back to this one. If you click remove here on the one you're in, you'll get the item back that you used to build this, and then you'll go ahead and have this whole thing despawn in about 5 seconds. Coming out to show you what I just made, it's kind of incredible how well built this stuff is. This is the platform. It seems like a really cool place to make a base, although if I recall correctly, you might need to tell the game that you're the boss, so it will actually let you build up here, but that's what other mods are for. And this is the wind turbine. It's just well made and pretty and exactly what you would expect it to be. And also, it's a potentially very funny strategy to get to the front of the Aurora by just building a series of Windsurfer platforms to get there and just walking over the Reaper. Done with energy, let's head over to storage, as it's one that still matters quite a lot. You can build that remote storage unit I was talking about and linking it up to the heavy drills, but you can also build server racks. These essentially digitize your items. Is that nonsense? You bet it is. Is it helpful? Very. The way a server rack works is a small one can hold 6 and a big one can hold 20 of these storage disks. Each storage disk is essentially a locker. They hold 48 items. To access what's in it, you'll need to make a terminal. This is a basic single-base terminal, and this is a big access your worldwide network terminal. Speaking of, do you want to put it on the worldwide network? Then your base needs an antenna, and the server you're talking about needs a transceiver disk. Now, if that sounds complicated, it's just because it's a lot of information and a lot of statements. The reality of doing it is very, very simple. In my base, ignore the thrum of the nuclear reactor, you can see I have a massive server here. The 20th disk is a transceiver disk, and the other 19 are all storage disks. These little circles show how filled up they are. And coming over here to this resource display, this is everything in this space, including stuff that isn't even in those terminals, but the stuff in the terminals especially. And up here in the top left, you can see Global Network. It allows me to select other things that have this in them, such as Base 1, which is where I am, and Base 55, which is the Lost River base that I never actually put anything in, because anytime I'm there, I would go to Base 1 and deposit it here instead. And yes, that is 100% how it works. It's not just for knowing what's there. I can take stuff out of my Lost River base from here. And again, is this overpowered and breaking the original theme of the game? Absolutely. But it's also just making the game more convenient and more fun on subsequent playthroughs, and removing a lot of the tedium of building a second base. Which leads us with life solutions and home solutions. I'm going to start with life solutions, because I legitimately don't understand this one. The energy pill vending machine sells them at such insanely high values of credits that I never even bought one. It legitimately seems like a bug in this version. The mini med bay is nice. I built one, it's cool. But the base utility unit gives you oxygen and pressurized water? But you already have oxygen, and pressurized water is like a problem they invented for above ground bases that doesn't need to be there? And I didn't have a above ground basis anyway. And again, base oxygen tank. Not really a thing you need if your base has power. So these are just like sort of the odd men out that feel like they aren't quite finished. However, coming over to home solutions, this tab is incredible, and it's the main reason to buy the mod. We mentioned teleportation, let's start there. There's a quantum teleporter unit to teleport you. You can also get a quantum teleporter vehicle badge to teleport vehicles to a location. Coming down to my teleporter room, you can see there's an outpost in the Lost River, and if I wanted to teleport there, all I have to do is click this and confirm teleport. You will need to add your teleporters to the global network when you first get them so that other bases can see them, but that's about it. Next, we have this thing right next to it. This is the quantum power bank charger. You can put in a depleted quantum power bank and an ion cube to power it back up. I don't think it was supposed to go that quickly. That was a bug, don't worry about that. We'll just power this other one up, It's fine, and you can see it's supposed to tick up slowly like this. And whenever you power one back up, it's going to fully consume that ion cube every time. And what these do is they allow you to teleport from somewhere other than a teleporter. So for this, I could just click Lost River, or instead, I can hit F2, go over to the teleportation tab, and use my battery bank to teleport to base 55, which is the Lost River base. And I don't actually need to use the teleporter for that, I can do it from anywhere. And in that same vein, I don't actually want to be here, I'm going to teleport straight back. Now the last section of the teleportation stuff is the Quantum Teleporter Vehicle Pad. This only matters if you're using the little handheld power banks, because you can't actually use anything inside your base while inside of a vehicle, just by definition. However, if you're out and about exploring the world with your prawn suit, and you find that you've, I don't know, fallen down a cliff or something, it's just gonna be a hassle to get back to your base, it's gonna be 10 minutes traveling, you don't feel like it. You can use F2 while you're inside your vehicle, go over to teleportation and teleport to your base, and now instead of consuming 1500 power on your little battery bank, it's gonna consume a full 3000, but it's going to take your vehicle with you to this teleporter pad. And that's just incredibly handy. Probably the best part of teleportation outright. Of course, that's not even the selling point. For me, the selling point was the jukebox and the speakers, which are, well, you know what they are. Coming into my base, you can see the jukebox is very loud. I have it set to 7%. I used to have speakers across my entire base, but there's a bug right now where placing 40 speakers or so will cause them to start crackling. So, yeah, just like exercise stick jams in moderation, I guess. An important note though, there's a very specific place and file type these have to be for the game to pick up on them. Coming over to my file manager, this is my recordings tab. Down here under this PC on Windows 10, you're gonna have a file called music. Under this, you need to create a folder called Unknown Worlds, then Subnautica, and then you can place various .wav files in here. The jukebox only picks up .wav files from this folder. Very, very important. And after that, there's a million little things that's nice to have around the base. The peeper lounge, a cooler planter, a mini filter and fountain, curtains for your windows, a computer CPU. I don't know why, but you can get one. You want subwoofers to only hear the bass? Go for it. You want holographic posters or signs or TVs that can actually play video files if you put them in? Absolutely. You can do all of these cool little decorations. And I'm going to show you a little bit around my house of like what this actually entails going into your base.
Hello Riley, would you like Mr. Spicy Chips? They're a great reward for adventurers like you.
Unfortunately, I've lost all my Amazon credits, so I can't buy any of that. There's a shower, a toilet, grossly overpriced pills, a sink which you can turn on and it will be deafeningly loud. This is just me being crazy, but you can get shelves, you can get a microwave, a drying kit, a stove. God, it's so loud. And just generally speaking, it feels like the base is a much nicer with all of these new options to build and new systems to engage with. There's just more to do in the crafting side of the game, more to think about, more to build. It's just really, really nice, and I greatly appreciate FCS Studios for all of the building options it adds to the game. Next up, we have a mod called De-Extinction. And I'm not actually going to be showing you the page for it because I'm going to be driving around the world and showing it to you. It adds all sorts of animals to the game that were based on concept art that never quite made it into the game. Those little guys are called filtworms. They close up when you get close to them, and otherwise they're filter feeders. There are all sorts of tiny little fish like this guy, the axetail, that are just around and edible now. And as I travel further towards my destination, I should mention that De-Extinction is one of my favorite mods because it adds Leviathan class predators to the game, and you, on your first time playing with it, don't know where they are, which brings back that fear of new biomes, because there might be Leviathan predators in there you don't know anymore, and that's wonderful. However, it does have a slight bug worth mentioning. On a save and load, it can sometimes duplicate the enemies it adds, not the Leviathans, but pretty much everything else. It never impacted my performance too much, but it did duplicate some smaller predators that it added, which make them start traveling in massive packs, which is terrifying and awesome, but might be a deal breaker for you. I think it's just an amazing thing, and I prefer it to be a feature, not a bug, but that remains to be seen if they'll actually embrace that and set them to consistent spawn rates of traveling in packs in the future. Now, one of my favorite things about this mod is it answers a question of, what do Leviathans eat? And the answer is these dudes, the Stellar Thalassians. There just needs to be huge animals in the ocean that are actually capable of being eaten by them. I don't have an example right now, but there's a large, like, jelly ray-sized fish around called grand gliders that travel in schools and help to answer the same question. Now, when I say that twist eels travel in schools, I mean it. There are just a lot of twist deals in my game these days. And it's kind of awesome, I kind of love it. And lastly, I want to talk about the Gulper Leviathan. I specifically don't want to show it to you in game, because then you'll know where at least one of them is, and that'll ruin the whole point. The Gulper Leviathan has some incredibly good decisions made around it. It's incredibly aggressive, and it generally does not roar from far away like the Ghost Leviathan. It just doesn't make sounds unless it's attacking you. And those two characteristics are exactly what you want out of a new Leviathan that's entire point is to make you scared because you don't know where it is. It's not going to tell you it's there, and it's going to come at you very, very quickly. I absolutely love the Gulper Leviathan, and it was one of two mods that went a tremendous way towards making the game scary again. The other one is DeathRun. I know you might see the words roguelike super hard and think, whoa, I don't want that. That is terrible. It's not what I'm here for. And I agree with you. You can run DeathRun with very specific settings, so that instead of making it a roguelike super hard game, it just makes Subnautica scary again. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Coming over to the mod setting from QMod Manager, you can see that DeathRun has a lot of settings. And it turns out most of them can be configured down to easy, which means what it originally was. So I have DeathRun damage taken, which means we take up to 100% more damage. Almost everything's on easy. I still have personal diving depth on DeathRun. This adds a system where upgrading your swimming suits lets you dive down deeper. You can't just swim to the bottom of the ocean naked. I have explosion time set to long, which is not really relevant because it doesn't do anything with Death's Explosion easy. All of this other stuff on easy. Creature aggression on DeathRun. You don't know where it's safe anymore because Reapers and Ghosts might aggro you from much further away than you're used to. It makes you feel way less safe when you're hearing a Reaper roar because legitimately I'm pretty sure they can aggro from outside of draw distance at this point, which is kind of what I want. I don't want to feel safe moving around. It gives you new, harder start locations. You get the water to be dark and murky like this. In the normal game, it shows a little bit further. You can also make it like impossibly dark, but I think dark is just a good setting graphically. And all of this other stuff is just disabled. Food from Island is still there. I've got all of this other stuff basically just turned off, or as the base game had it. So all this is really doing is giving me new spawn points with more creature aggression dealing more damage. You wanna know the big difference it makes? Reapers one-shot your Seamoth. In the base game, if your Seamoth's at 100% health, it will not be killed by any Leviathan in one hit, and that's just not true anymore. And that tremendously changes the way the game feels. In fact, all of these mods together really make Subnautica feel like a brand new game, and I had a great time with it. I hope some of this was interesting or helpful to you, and I hope you have fun with Subnautica in the future. If you like this video, then like, comment, subscribe, and all that nonsense. It really does help the channel out. Feel free to support me on Patreon if you so wish, but I mean, I'm not expecting you to. And I think that's it. See you in the next one.